Welcome. I am Gwyn LaRee,
And I am Krejcha.
and we are going to tell you all about voiceover,
And podcasting.
not all about, because it's way too big. We would be here for several days, but we will give you a really good introduction. So, here you go. Just in case you missed, of course, we have the pictures backwards.
Again, I'm Krejcha. I am the executive director and co-founder of Autism Empowerment. For those of you who may not know who we are a nonprofit based here in Vancouver, Washington, and we've been around since 2011, serving youth, teens, and adults in autistic and neurodivergent communities.
Yay.
Happy to have you.
And I am Gwyn LaRee, one of your instructors and a program coordinator with the Neurodivergent Creators Collective. Still learning how to say that mouthful. And we started this program with John and Karen's awesome support to introduce our community to the entertainment and media industries. So I have a lot of experience. My other program coordinator, Brian Tashima, has wide-ranging experience. So we want to do these workshops and get everybody up to speed on how you can be a part of this amazing industry. So we're going to start off with a session that I did. I'm really involved with the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, and we did a thing called the Disability Film Challenge Loop Group. Well, pardon me. What are you doing, you silly thing? Oh, my phone gave up. Here we go. Now it's thinking about it. Technology is great when it works. Okay, now it's not even going to do that. Okay, let's try something else here. Just lost everything.
Is it not connected at all?
For those of you in the Zoom, I'd put the link to the video in the chat, so feel free to watch that.
Gotcha. Well, they
our tech bro, the great Andy, is trying to save my bacon. Okay. There we go. Hey,
winner.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
That was impressive as well.
Yes, it was. Low crawls. All right, let's watch this silly video. It has. Oh, no. Here we go.
Making history. We are going to have the first ever disability and what people have tremendous pictures today is all of getting the opportunity to see characters and to learn from experienced people that do voiceover all the time. Like I have some, and that show or account, that's it's really great. Hey.
experience and exposure that's helped to share a skill.
Wow, I did. My police. Is sensitive. Been far too long. Been given a narrative. I suggest not telling people like sir. Nature recap. Really good. Once you meet, they go, oh, I like Nick, you know, I like Eileen, I like this. So they go, I think about it as they're creating the content. When they're creating the content, disabilities in mind, that's when true representation.
It's proven because we're showing people that disabilities are able to make a difference in a way. I want them to do this. That's great.
It's just such a big and yourself around the fun.
If you come to a workshop like this, hosted by Sony, or you know, even really believing in our talent and our skill, it just shows that we're valued, that we're seen and heard. It's an acknowledgement or just it's actually fun to celebrate. I just really want to say again, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so does anybody here know what a loop group is, what they do? It's an odd term. When you're watching a film and you see the lead characters like walking through an airport or something, when they film that scene, all of the extras that you see, even though their mouths are moving, they aren't making any noise because the whole reason everyone's there is to listen to those main characters. So what a loop group does is after it's all filmed and edited, then they ship that footage out and the loop group gets together and they say, okay, what does it look like those people are saying? What are the different things you say when you're going through an airport? And a lot of times we will actually, like the mic's over there and everybody's going to walk in a circle and we're going to just say things that you hear in an airport and they're going to record that and put that in on that scene. Sometimes you try to match what they're saying. Sometimes, like you saw in the scene with the robots, give us the laptop, give us the laptop, or the crowd scenes, we're just bringing that emotion to life. But it's a lot of fun. And we get to do a lot of different things. So everyone that you saw in that video is enthusiastic. They're all studying how to be an actor, how to bring these characters and these voices to life. We have to speak clearly most of the time. We have to be professional. But the really cool thing, it's not that hard to learn. Just being here is your very first step. So there was a bunch of information on the loop group. Some get some loop groups are special. You get people that will specifically work in hospitals. Like, you know, I wouldn't know what medication to say we're going to give this.
It was one of the best med stories.
But a loop group member that has medical experience is gonna, give them 2 milligrams of whatever stat, and that's going to sound exactly right. I can call cadence. I can call facing movements for military situations. You know, they can say, get that sergeant on the line now. And it sounds realistic. So that is one of the ways you can work in voiceover. Then we get into animation, which is also the same for video games. Here's some bad news for you. No matter how well you do Daffy Duck or Mickey Mouse, I'm not going to hire you to do those characters. So if you come to me and you say, I do a Groucho from Sesame Street, they've already got the person to do that. It's really good for you to practice, but one of the things you bring as a voiceover artist is your imagination, is your acting. So this is one that I just recorded back in April, and her name is Ruby, and this is what they gave me before the recording session. So you can see the specs, a friendly bird with a very bird brain scheme. And the show type is an animated show called KISS. I had to go look that up. So I got this 48 hours before our recording session. So when I went to the studio, I'm working with a director and the recording engineer, and they're like, okay, what do you think Ruby sounds like? So I'm going, why settle for crumbs, Gary? Look, right there. They call them eagles. And then we started talking a little bit about it, and we realized kind of sound a little bit New Jersey. So I'm going to lean into that a bit more. And the other thing, Ruby's really smart. She doesn't understand Windows. And when I went in to record this, I'd never done a hitting something before. So I went, I'll go first. Oh, no. And I'm like, no. Don't move your feet. Don't have any, but you can move your upper body and your arms as much as you want. And so the director explained to me, it has to sound like you got punched in the stomach. So I was like, all right. And we tried it again. I'm like, I'll go first. And there must be a force field or something. And that's the imagination. That's what they are looking for when you do these auditions. So if you're looking to do characters, video games, you're going to do lots and lots of body noises. The hits, the punches, the screams, the dying. It's all very big and very enthusiastic without moving your feet. So next one, ADR. I'm sure you guys have probably heard that bannered around a bit. You will see it on the credits. It is most often used when you're filming in that airport and some taxi comes by laying on its horn, and it messes up the dialogue of those main characters. The sound engineer is going to go in, he's going to take that taxi horn out, but in doing that, he also loses the dialogue. So they'll have the actors come back in, look at that film, and try to match exactly what they did on set. Where you and I can work on it is taking foreign language projects, and we call it dubbing it into English. So we're watching that same scene and we're trying to match the emotion and the mouth movement of this person who is speaking a different language with English words. And they have sort of the dialogue figured out for you in English, but not always. Sometimes it just doesn't look right. So in that case, you as the voiceover actor are going to work with that director and try to find words that convey the same thing, match the mouth movement of the original actor. That one's really tough. They only let you do 4 hours at a time, and you are exhausted at the end of 4 hours. So yeah, there's the dubbing. Yeah, I think we already did all that. Commercials and narration. These are the ones you hear all the time. When you listen to them, you think that person is just speaking. But they are working very hard to sound relatable, to sound friendly. So I could do a commercial with this voice. But if I'm doing an announcer and I need to be excited, you may think that I'm just speaking in my voice, but I'm doing the character because this is my narrator voice. Or maybe it's, we never know what kind of day is going to turn out for us. That it's a character to us, but it can't sound like a character to the audience. So that's things you practice if you want to be a voiceover actor. I have 7 characters written down on my big sheet of paper in my office, and I run through those 7 characters at least 4 or 5 times a week. So I've got those voices in my head always. Books. Everybody talks about reading books. It's a great way to practice. It is a good way if you have a professional recording setup. You can make money. There's lots of scams. And for the amount of hours you're going to put into it, you're not going to make much money per hour. If you're really good at it, if you can do all of the character voices and really bring that story to life, you can succeed. I don't have a professional setup, so I don't even look at this, but I will practice reading aloud because it's good for both the actor and the voice actor to say these words out loud, to see how I sound and avoid the uhs and the well and trying to figure out what a word means. It's really, really good practice. And it doesn't cost a dime because you can get new books from the library. Oh, all right. Did you have a question? Oh, okay, I'm going to pass it off to Karen.
Thank you so much, Gwyn. Well,
Uh-huh.
wasn't that great? That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Gwyn, I could just sit over there and listen to you doing your voices all day. Like, come on, just keep going. And the video was really interesting. The loop group.
Yes, thank you.
I love that. So, okay, now we're moving into the podcasting portion of our session. Before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to get a feel for who we have here in the audience and also our Zoom audience at home. And I'm going to ask a few questions. And when I do, I'm going to just ask you to raise your hand if it's something that applies to you. And Ryan, since you're monitoring the Zoom people online, if you can kind of let me know what the answers are there, that would be great. Okay, so since this was both a voiceover and a podcasting session, I figured that we're probably people coming here for either one or another or both. So raise your hand if you're brand new to podcasting or you don't really know what a podcast is. Just have one here. We've got some people with experience. Okay, well, good. Okay. So raise your hand if you've ever listened to an audio podcast before. Okay, this is pretty impressive. What about online? Definitely more. And there's also video podcasts. That would be something you might watch on YouTube. So raise your hand if you've ever listened and watched to a video podcast. Wow. Okay, great. And raise your hand if you're interested in potentially starting your own podcast, either for fun or for a hobby. Okay, okay. Got some. What about online? 2. Okay, we're getting lots of podcasts started here. You too. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about what a podcast is in just a moment. Yeah, I'm going to go over all that. Just got one more question. So we've got some hobby podcast people, but is there anybody in this room who might like to start a podcast and possibly make some money at some point from it? Okay, money is not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's really kind of advanced for this workshop. This is going to be more of an intro, but I will have a slide on that, and that is something that we can talk about later at another group as well. So I am really excited because most of what we're, did I do that? Okay, most of what we're going to talk about is an overview of podcasting. There's so much involved with this that I couldn't get everything in a session. You guys would have to spend the night with me. We'd have to have accommodations. So we're going to give you an overview, and then I'm also going to give you some beginner how-to tips. The good news is that you should have around the table and online some slides and some resources, including a podcast planner for afterwards when you want to think about what you might want to do for your own podcast. So we also will be recording this, and afterwards, since there's a lot of content, if you want to watch it online, we will have it on our website. So with that, what is a podcast? Now, most everybody here seems to know that. If there are one or two that were kind of new, it's like a radio show or an audio show or a video that you might watch on the internet. The difference between that and a live program is it's something that you can listen to on demand. You can listen to it in your car, if you're working out at the gym or just kind of at home. You can listen to it at any point in time. They're either audio only or they're video based with audio. And you can find them on apps from your phone or on your computer, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube. And they're generally hosted by either one person, or it could be a co-host, or it could even be a group. There's so many different ways that people can podcast. And they can be all different types. We'll talk about genres here in a moment. They can be funny, it can be informative, it can be something that's serious, it can be advocacy, storytelling for good. And these are examples. But what I'd like you to do is think of a podcast for yourself as your voice in your way. And I say that because I'm not a professional. Gwyn is a professional actor. Brian is a professional musician. I am a person just like you who years ago decided that maybe we would start a podcast when Autism Empowerment started. And boy, was I nervous. I am not the kind of person I get a lot of social anxiety. So sometimes, like talking to groups and things like that, I'm not sure exactly how to do it live. The reason that this Neurodivergent Creators Collective works is that we can be ourselves. We can do what we want and use our voice and know that there's other people out there that are like us that are going to be able to relate. And your story, even if you reach just one person, is something that can be used for good. So the Autism Empowerment podcast, and I'm sure that there probably are a couple people who may have heard of it, but this is something that we started back in 2012, 2013. And back then, podcasting really wasn't that popular. And I think some of you guys may have still been in school then, elementary school. And when we started, it was live. We didn't get the chance to edit. We didn't have the chance to do transcriptions. We would call into something called Blog Talk Radio, and I would do an interview podcast. And then I would hope that the person I'm interviewing would call in from wherever in the country that they were calling from. And then we would have kind of like a phone conversation, but that would become our podcast. It would be an interview, and then it would be live. And the audio quality, not so good. The content, that was what was important because we were trying to get a message out there. And for our organization, way back then, there was not a lot of positive talk out there about autism and neurodivergency and disabilities, and we wanted to make a difference. So our podcast was all about interviewing people in our community that were doing awesome things and shining a light on that. So back then, we did about 75 podcasts. We had about 150,000 listeners, and it was a lot of fun. But unfortunately, our organization had a lot of other things that we were doing, and so we put it on hiatus. And then after the pandemic, we came back in 2021 and we relaunched with a new name, a new look. And instead of doing an interview podcast, John and I co-hosted, and we did a show that was just talking about topics important to our community. The big difference with that was that we used editing software. We had some audio tune-ups. And so if there were a lot of ums and ahs, or if I suddenly lost my place and then just didn't say anything for 5 minutes, there weren't people who had to worry about listening to that. So there's a lot of free software that can help you with your podcast. So if you want to listen to one of our old podcasts, just as an example, we have a page, autismempowermentpodcast.org, and we actually are going to be bringing the podcast back hopefully later this year. Now, I mentioned before that there's different types of podcasts. These are kind of the big ones in genre. You may, since you're watchers of podcasts or listeners of podcasts, may know some of these. True crime, that's one of the most popular podcast formats. Comedy, fiction or storytelling. Sports and gaming is really popular. And then pop culture, music, TV, film, reality shows. Basically, almost anything that you might have a fandom for. And that's something that a lot of people in our community can relate to. Some examples, my favorite murder. One I want to bring up is called Dork Tales Storytime Podcast, because that podcast is by somebody who is a voiceover actor, who is neurodivergent, who identifies as autistic. And he has been doing this podcast for a number of years, doing acting for kids that are 12 and under, telling fairy tales, telling history stories. And it's a really great example of a podcast and someone in our community being successful. In fact, there's a fun connection. Brian Tashima hired him to do the voiceover for the audiobook for Secret of the Song Shell. So that's a good one to check out. When you get home, you can just Google these names and they'll show up and you can listen to them. And speaking of Brian, there's also Second Player Speaks. He has his own podcast with Kyle and Dan, and I think they've had about 169 episodes. So they're good to check in on pop culture and those types of things. And let's see what else. Informational and educational podcasts. Now, who here has listened to an informational or educational podcast? Raise your hand. Okay, what about online? Couple here? Okay. This is something that is very popular for people who are neurodivergent to want to do, because we tend as people, at least a lot of us, to have special interests in certain areas. And so, say, for example, my husband who likes hippos would be ideal to do a podcast just about hippos. Ryan, who likes weather and is going to school for atmospheric science, he could do a weather podcast. So think about something that you're absolutely passionate about, and it might be something that could become your very first podcast. These are just a few of the different ones: news and current events, investigative journalism, health and fitness, religion, faith and spirituality, self-help and personal growth, and science. We talked briefly about formats before. Generally, there are different types of formats for podcasts, and the popular one for a lot of people to listen to and watch is interview. That's where someone like me might bring on a guest and we might talk about a particular topic. It could also be a panel. There are monologues and solos. Think about that as, well, if you watch late night TV, usually the comedian comes on at the beginning with a monologue. Well, that turn it into a podcast type form would be somebody talking the whole time. It could be comedy. It could be an advocacy issue. Co-host, that's what John and I did for a while. And if you get tired of just talking a lot yourself and you want to bounce things off of people, it sounds good sometimes to have a co-host. And then finally, storytelling is a really popular form for podcasts, and that tends to involve a lot of times more connecting. Now, those can sometimes be podcasts with huge production budgets, but it's also something that you might be able to do yourself, and it gives you a chance to do sound design or acting. Think of it kind of like a radio show. So why podcast? Why might you want to start your own podcast? Well, first, sharing your voice, sharing your lived experience. You are uniquely you. There is not one other person like you in this world. So you have something to share. And there are people out there that you can touch and that would be willing to listen. Exploring topics that you're passionate about, as I mentioned, whatever that your hobby or your special interest is, good topics for podcasts, fandoms, connecting with the community. Now that might seem kind of counterintuitive because if you're recording a podcast, how are you connecting with the community? But a lot of these podcasts end up having their own websites, their own fandom pages on Reddit, or if you're older like me, maybe on Facebook or TikTok for people that are younger. And so you can build communities right around your podcast. Other reasons are to teach and to learn and to advocate. These are really popular for people like us at Autism Empowerment when we want to get a message out about things that are important to people in our community. Empowering others. Well, a lot of times when you tell a story about adversity that you've overcome or some challenges that you have faced, it lets other people know that they're not alone. And that's one of the biggest things. If you can sort of empower yourself, you can empower others to take a chance. We want to try to empower you to take a try at podcasting or voiceover or whatever your dream is. Because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try to be real and authentic to yourself. And as somebody who's an autistic woman who grew up masking myself for about 40 years or plus, it becomes very difficult sometimes to let that mask down, to let those walls down, to stand up in front of a group like this and be myself. But I figure if I can stand up and do this and fumble and pace back and forth and you know, get an exercise class going just by trying to present, then you know, maybe you guys will also say, you know what, hey, this person has a lot of anxiety, this person's got a lot of stuff going on, they can do it, I can give it a shot too. So that's what I'm hoping to encourage you in. And you don't need a big platform, you don't need a perfect voice or fancy gear to make a difference. This is actually one of the most accessible ways to get started, to get your voice out there and share with others who connect and get it. So what do you actually need to get started? It's less than you actually think. Well, first you need an idea, your passion, your story, your experience. You need your voice. You don't need to sound like a radio host. You need a way to record. For most people, that's as simple as just using your smartphone, your phone, or if you don't have access to a phone, a computer. And then some way to record with recording software. They have free programs out there. There's Audacity. There is GarageBand if you are a Mac or an iPhone user. And there's Descript. There's a variety of different things that we put in your resources to kind of help you with that next step forward. You do need a quiet space as much as possible, but that can be something like your closet. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need a big booth. You just need to, and there's a lot of inexpensive ways that you can reduce noise as well, attaching to your phone. So there's lots of tricks of the trade that you can learn along the way. And then finally, a place to publish. And that, again, opportunities for free, Spotify for podcasters, rss.com, and those ways as well. So when you're starting out, we highly recommend, don't try to make things complex, make it simple. For someone like me, who has organization issues and who tends to have a computer with 52 tabs on it open at the same time, I need to have some sort of routine that fits my neurology to make it work, okay? So remember, your phone is enough. You can record your first episode in a quiet room. You get a chance to practice. The great thing is you don't publish it right away. You can practice as much as you want. Practice that test episode, okay? And use the beginner-friendly tools. Don't go out and spend a lot of money on a lot of software or a lot of gear. You know, you don't need to do that. Eventually, if you want to have a big production and monetize, you might want to upgrade a little bit. In the beginning, you don't need to do. And done is better than perfect. Speaking as somebody who tends to be somewhat of a perfectionist, and as editor of Spectrum Life magazine, I'm the one of the people that keeps going back to proofread things. I tend to be the kind of person who's afraid to put something out there unless it's absolutely perfect and done. Now that is something you shouldn't have to worry about, because getting things out there and being real and being human is going to be more relatable than being perfect, because none of us are perfect. Imperfect voices can still change lives. So what is in a typical podcast episode? 4 things generally. First, you have your intro, and that is usually something that you may record to use each time of your episode. It could have music, but generally it's something like greeting the audience saying, "Hi, I'm John. I'm here to welcome you to my podcast. Today I am going to talk about hippos, and we're going to talk about swimming with hippos. And this may just be our 1 episode, because if you swim with hippos, you're probably not going to have a second episode." So then you go on to the main content, and that is whatever idea or story that you have for that episode. And you want to try to focus on one topic per episode for clarity, especially when you're first starting out. Call to action. Now that would be, say you're doing an advocacy podcast, and maybe you want to have somebody meet downtown to march for a thing. That a call to advocacy might be something where you want your listener to take action. So you might say something like, "Come meet us downtown, on July 14th. Or it might be contact a congressman, attend event. It could just be visit a website. You may not have that, but that's something that a lot of people will have. And then finally, your outro. Now that is when you're taking a couple moments to summarize the key points of what your episode was all about. You're thanking your listeners for tuning in. When you're first starting out, and throughout the time that you do your podcasting, you should definitely ask them to subscribe. Maybe check out your website or your social media if you have them. And then you sign off with your name and a slogan. Thanks for listening. Until next time. Just a few reviews on tips for beginners. Start simple. Hi, I'm Ryan. This is my first episode. I'm going to be talking about hurricanes. Pick a purpose. Choose a format that you like. Choose a length. Now, that's one neat thing about podcasts. They don't have to be a specific length. It could be as short as 5 minutes. It could be 15. It could be an hour. But do something that's comfortable for you. And then this is a really important tip. Think about your audience. Who is your demographic? Who do you think is your ideal person that you are going to be presenting to? Because if it's just everybody, then it's kind of hard to focus in and laser in on what you want to talk about. But if it's just one type of person, for example, all people who like the Seattle Seahawks or something, if you're a sports podcaster, then you can focus in on what would the average Seattle Seahawks fan sound like, and then tailor your podcast to them. You don't need to sound fancy. The first episode is often just about introducing yourself and being comfortable. You can always re-record it later, although I recommend that you keep it, because then you're going to see your own growth. And you know what? Telling people that it's your first episode and maybe you're a little nervous, and being human, that's okay. People want to connect with other people that are real like them. You can share your podcast in a variety of different ways, social media. And I would suggest thinking about where your audience is that you think you're presenting to, and making sure when you promote your podcast that you're promoting on those networks. So for some, that might be TikTok. It could be YouTube. It could be Reddit. For people that are older like me, it might be a Facebook group. But think about what it is and share that way. I recommend sharing with your circle in the beginning. Your friends, your family, are really good opportunities to be able to get some feedback from people that you love. Have that first subscriber. That always feels good. You can try email newsletters if you are a blogger or you use Substack or Medium or something like that. Include it there. definitely let us know, the Neurodivergent Creators Collective community. We want to listen to your podcast. We want to hear what you're creating, and we want to share it. We want to celebrate with you. And then finally, if you have email, put a link in your bio, link in your bio for social media, also a signature line for your email, letting people know. So when you're sending out an email, that people know about your podcast. You don't need a huge audience to make an impact. One of the things that we always say at Autism Empowerment is we don't serve the 1 in 31, which is the current prevalence rate. We serve the 1 in 1, because for the 1, it's 100% of their lived experience. You're serving one person, and you can make a huge difference in this world by reaching one person. Marketing manageable. This is something that for someone like me who's neurodivergent is really, really important, because it's going to keep you going when you first start out. You want to create a routine that works for you and your neurology. What works for me may not work for you. You're going to know whether you are really good at spreadsheets and like to track everything. You're going to know whether, you should record a whole bunch of episodes at one time, or maybe just once a month. One of the things about podcasting that helps retain listeners is to be consistent with your episode drops. So say I'm going to record a podcast about hippos. It's going to drop every Tuesday at 4 p.m. and my listeners know that. But I don't have to record it around then. I can record it well in advance, and I can record 3 or 4 episodes at once. So if I'm feeling sick or I'm going to go on vacation, I've got a lot of episodes in the can that I can use to then load it later. So that's one way to help keep consistent. Repurposing content, that's taking clips from your podcast and being able to use them in social media to help advertise them. And you can use tools like CapCut or Descript. And then you want to be able to create a graphic to advertise each episode. It's a square graphic, and you can use free tools like Canva or other social media tools for that. Now, money. Show me the money. This was what we kind of like, maybe yeah. So that's not bad. You can make money podcasting, but it isn't as easy as people might think. And it's not traditionally going to come from your number of listeners. Now, people may think, it's like, if I have a gazillion subscribers, I'll maybe make $1 gazillion. And that's really not going to happen when you're first starting out. So what you want to do is think creatively. How can you tie your podcast in to other things that you are doing? Because your listener base you want to create a listener base that might be loyal to you. If you're an artist, maybe you're marketing in your podcast, and maybe somebody's going to want to read a book that you wrote. Or maybe that, you develop a fandom and they want merch. These are all different opportunities. You want to start with your passion, not pressure. If you come off really salesy and you just sound like you want to make money and, hey, donate and donate and donate, people are going to get turned off by that. But if you are genuinely authentic and you build that passion and you give them good content, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be potentially interested at some point in supporting you. And for that, there's things like Patreon, and there's Buy Me a Coffee, and then there's other ways that people can support what you do. So cross-promoting your work, and just remember that we believe that no matter what, your voice has value. Now, there's a lot of other ways that you can make money podcasting, and that's something we could talk about at a different point in time, but I wanted you to know it is possible. But in the beginning, it's not going to happen usually unless you're really creative in the process. Wrap up. What's next? You don't need to be perfect to begin. You can be yourself. Start messy, make mistakes, start honest, start wherever it is that you are. Podcasting is for everyone in some format. Whether you don't feel like you're ready to do a show yet, maybe you just want to be a guest. You can find podcasts out there that on topics that you're interested in. Ask if you can be a guest. It's something that we believe with your interviews, your ideas, your stories, your voice will matter. Keep learning and practicing. Try a test episode, journal, write things down, write out your ideas, or record with a friend. You've got lots of tools to begin. We've got resources for you. I know this was an awful lot of content, so we will have it again available on the website. And we are really excited to hear what you have to create. And we wish you the best of luck, and we want to know how it goes. Wait, there's more. For those of you who might be listening after the show and not live, we do have the resources from this presentation on our website at autismempowerment.org/AE-NCC. And we invite you to fill out our feedback survey, because that's going to tell us what kind of content we should create next. It can tell us if we're like doing good, or, you know, we're doing and we're hopefully there's more than these, but we want your honesty. So let us know how we can improve.
Oh, well, you state, does anyone have a question? Is there something that we didn't explain well? And Brian, is there anyone on Zoom with questions?
Well, someone wants to know whether you're taking.
What?
Ooh.
Well, I think they can. And Rye, you've got my information. So feel free to give them my email address, and I'm happy to have them contact.
It's an easy question.
That's an
I
easy
like
one.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an easy question considering.
NCC podcast.
That would be fun. We could do that.
There could be all sorts of opportunities there where everybody could have their own practice. So you never know, but we would need to hear feedback to see if that was something that would be interesting.
Yeah, we like feedback. So stuff that we've got coming up, July 26th. We're going to go back to Saturdays. Saturdays are easier for everyone. But in July, Brian is going to tell you all about writing and publishing. He published the Joe Suzuki series of books. There's 7 of them. I finished the first one last night. It is really good. I finished it all in one day. And I mean, I'm kind of a book dragon, but I can set down Dean Koontz and walk away. He set down Joe for about an hour. I'm like, oh, I got to go find out what's going on. So really recommend that one. You can get the book on Amazon if you want to read the story before you hear from Brian. Really, really good story. They're really, really cool thing. Look, I have a laser. I gotta do this. Ooh. Yes, I'm weird. I get that. Starting in August, the very first Saturday of every month, we're going to have a Zoom call, and we're just calling it Chill and Chat. Doesn't matter what you want to talk about. Preferably, it's more about entertainment and media, but it doesn't have to be. Brian and I, or our other core team members, are going to be available to answer your questions or talk about what shows we're watching, what books we're reading. I'm reading a book right now that's called Directing Actors by Judith Weston. I have learned more about acting from reading this book than I have about directing. So in August, if nobody comes up with a topic, I'm kind of going to want to talk about that book because it's really, really good. And I'd like to share that information. So we'll run half hour to an hour. It's always going to be the same Zoom link. So just hold on to that one link. And that first Saturday, we will be there. So if you're wanting to start a project, maybe you're in filmmaking, or you have a question about a podcast, you can jump on there, no registration, don't have to go through all the stuff that we do for the workshops. Just show up and we'll talk about it. Also, our interest survey, 33 people have taken it, but we just did a revamp so that we could get better information about what you want us to teach. So if you haven't taken it before, or even if you have, come back in and take it again. And that's where we'll figure out, how many of you want to learn about behind the scenes of the music industry? How many need to know how to build an actor's resume? We don't know what you know and don't know. So if you take the survey, you can tell us, and then we'll get to planning. What did I miss?
Everything was awesome. I think you were fantastic. What do you guys think? You jazzed? Yeah, all right.
Ah,
All right. Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be wonderful.
we are going to keep going. So we are on Facebook because we're old. I didn't know that. I didn't know Facebook was an old person thing. I love Facebook. But I'm old. You can email Brian. You can email me. We answer. We'd love to hear from you because you guys are the ones that are driving this. Here's the website again, just in case, and our Facebook group. We're looking for volunteers. If there's other places we should be, reach out to Autism Empowerment and tell us where you would like to be able to find us. We'll see what we can do. I think that's it.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. So